So if this is the avenue to remove Miss Kennedy, which I believe it is, then the next thing is now you've got to build on this. You've got to start having leaks and articles about financial problems inside of Disney, right? You got to have those come so that more and more of the embarrassing laundry has to be put out, so that that ultimately no one is going to blame Chapek for doing what he needs to do, and that requires humiliating himself in the process. But if this town, you humiliate yourself for a little bit and they forget about it because you're still the CEO of one of the biggest companies on the planet, right? It'll be once the game has been finished, it's all forgotten and moved on, and he'll be seen as the savior who acted to save the company once the general public and the general investorship understands how bad the situation is.
On May 12th, Variety put out an article describing how Bob Chapek is asserting himself as the new CEO of Disney, reshaping the company in accordance with his vision and strategy going forward. At the first glance, however, the article does not appear to put Chapek in too positive a light. It emphasizes the confusion going on behind the scenes, the chaos and the bruised egos, as Chapek is seemingly adding in new layers of bureaucracy, thereby taking power away from the creatives and storytellers and giving it to implied pencil pushers in distribution instead. Chapek has received a lot of criticism for this in some quarters, where it has been pointed out that he is effectively undoing the removal of bureaucracy which took Disney to new heights under Bob Iger. But is Chapek really steering Disney towards disaster, or is there more to it? There just might be. In our earlier conversations with him, our good friend, writer and producer Kamran Pasha predicted that in order to get rid of Kathleen Kennedy, the bane of Lucasfilm and Star Wars, but up until recently, also the most powerful woman in Hollywood, Bob Chapek would have to play some 4D chess in the trades, and in the short term, lose some face in the process. That could be just what we're seeing right here. In this video, we will go through this Variety piece and see how Kamran Pasha interprets it. 2 days after the release of the Variety piece titled "Disney's New World Order Leads to Confusion and Bruised Egos," we asked Kamran Pasha, what is this in reality about?
Before we get to the title, what's happening here is that a specific narrative is being told within the industry, because everyone in the industry tends to repeat the trade's narratives like a mantra. And that's how you create, a perspective or even an illusion of what you want to be true, right? So this is, and they don't do that on their own. The trades, maybe in the beginning, they had some level of independence, but they were always to some degree, the trades have always been in the pocket of the studios, really going back to the golden age of Hollywood, right? They're there to serve as some gossip for the industry, but when it comes down to major shifts within the industry's power structure, they're there to tell the industry the official story that it's going to have to buy into by those who actually control things behind the scenes, right? So what is happening here is suddenly, when you're using words like Chapek is bruising egos, that's actually interesting because, as you know, Hollywood is based on ego, right? It's based on powerful people. And why would you need to say that the CEO of a company was doing, was busting egos or pushing, because you would expect the CEO of a major studio and a major company like Disney to be doing that all the time. That's expected. What that is doing is creating a perception of Mr. Chapek on purpose, which is that this guy is a ball buster. Mr. Bob Chapek is going in there and he is cleaning house, which is what that means when you say bruising egos. When you're saying bruising egos, it means you're getting, in the face of people that are already established in power there and making them do things they didn't want to do.
With that context established, let's look at some of the highlights of this Variety piece. The Walt Disney Company is in the throes of a major leadership shift, with newly minted CEO Bob Chapek asserting more authority as the longtime leader he replaced, Bob Iger, prepares to surrender his executive chairman role for emeritus status at year-end. At the corporate level, Iger has moved much more into the background than he was a few months ago, even on the creative side, insiders say. Everyone is becoming more and more deferential to Chapek, according to one Disney executive who asked not to be identified. Things are radically different than they were 6 months ago. The insider noted that the senior leaders have tried to insulate the creative teams from all the upheaval. So far, in other words, a complete non-story. There is nothing really out of the ordinary here. Merely a new CEO realizing a new strategy and structure.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I said you would think you don't need to do that, right? You're the CEO, right? Why would you need to do that? And why would? But what it is a signal to the town that this is the new guy, and now we have to see him as the guy that's going to essentially change all of Bob Iger's legacy, right, to establish his own, which is the norm. I mean, again, that's the norm whenever in a studio, whether it's movie or television, whenever a new regime comes in, it is assumed that the old regime stuff is going to be thrown out. I experienced that directly when I was on the show Kings. We were slotted to be one of the most important shows on NBC at the time. That was the year that Kings was coming on the air, 2009, was the year that ER was going off the air, right? And so we were actually slotted to take the ER slot, which is one of the most obviously watched time slots on network television. We were slotted to take that slot. That's how important that show Kings was, because NBC under that regime, wanted to present this as, we're going to do HBO quality stuff on NBC, right? And we're going to promote it at that level. And then guess what? The president of NBC was fired, and then it was fired just before the new year. And when I got the news that he was out, that the head of the head of the network was out, I said, okay, we're done, because the next person that's going to come in is going to erase everything he did. And so literally, I started packing that day. I was in New York City. I started packing that day. I said, we're done. And the next day, the new regime had come in, and we were told, oh, Kings is no longer going to be in the ER slot. We're going to put you up on Sunday against The Simpsons. So I said, okay, yeah, we're done. We're done. No one's going to watch this. No one's going to know it's there. We went from being the most promoted show on NBC to being banished and memory hold, right? That's the norm in Hollywood. I give that example to say that when that is the norm, no one questions it. You didn't have to put out a trade report saying Kings has been shafted because of a regime change, right? Everyone knew that was coming, right? So why is this coming out? It is coming out there essentially to give Mr. Chapek the cover he needs to do to start removing powerful people and establishing him as a aggressive alpha male who's kicking heads, right? And so those who have too much power to just be shuffled out have been given notice by the industry standard that their time is up. And that includes Miss Kennedy, in my opinion.
After covering some more details about how Chapek is reshaping Disney, the Variety article gets into the creative versus distribution side of things. To some inside the media company, Disney's move last October to restructure its operations elevated the executives who distribute Disney movies and shows over the ones who actually oversee their production. The shakeup also granted a great deal of influence to a top Chapek ally, Kareem Daniel, who was elevated to chairman of Disney Media and Entertainment Distribution from his previous role overseeing consumer products. So, in other words, Chapek's ally in distribution now has more power than anyone in charge of creative content production.
If distribution matters more than content, that's saying something. When you say distribution matters more than content, what you're saying is the customer matters more than our political ideology. You're saying it right there, right? Because content is created by the creatives, right? And when you're saying distribution is our focus, it means the end of the pipeline, not the beginning of the pipeline.
Right.
We're creating the product, right? So that's already a statement of, again, this is to cover. All of this is cover when the axe inevitably, which I think has come down on Miss Kennedy, to say, look, whenever Bob has to run into her in the cocktail party circuit, it's like, look, Kathy, that that this wasn't personal. It wasn't even personal about you and Lucasfilm. It's about shifting the focus to distribution. That's all it is. And so it wasn't personal. I wish you good luck. I hope that new production company is working out great for you.
Yeah, it does kind of sound like there's a shift in the focus, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. And that is a good point. Like, it's like, yeah, we distributed these Star Wars movies. We didn't make them. Lucasfilm made them.
Yeah.
So you can't blame us. It does have a very much of a ring of that, like that to it, for sure.
But all of this is, again, all of this is cover. All of this is cover to do what you got to do. And the reason you got to do what you got to do is you're not making money, right? That's what all of this is. This is just a Hollywood gobbledygook in order to get the train on the new track.
Yeah, and a script doctor who brought this up early 2020, where they weren't taking any new pitches. For those who may remember from when he was on bringing that up.
Yeah, and again, that was script doctor's right. That's when the sign that the train is beginning to shift to a new track, right? That's your first thing. Is like, oh, are we going in this direction? I thought we were going over there. We're going to go over here, okay? And now the trades are always the end of the journey. They're not the beginning of the journey. That now that this is being put in such an important article, right, in Variety, this is the signaling that the journey is done, that it's over. So that when the announcements of people moving along to better and bigger things and all of that happen, no one is surprised because that's already been decided. You don't put this out in the trades with any loose ends. This is the official PR release of what we have already done.
Emphasizing the shift of power towards distribution, Variety continues. Hollywood dealmakers noted that the new structure at Disney is Byzantine and more convoluted than necessary, adding an extra managerial layer into the process of getting projects made.
Yeah, and the word Byzantine isn't done intentionally. It is to tell the town that now that there are hoops you have to go through, even powerful people. So it doesn't become about Ms. Kathleen Kennedy was ousted. It's like she's got this Byzantine structure that's just hard to navigate, even for someone like her. It's probably better for her to move on. It's just too much, right? It's the words are being chosen very specifically.
Indeed. And then it goes on to talk about who would be the one to greenlight projects before. When Iger departs in December, it is expected that Walt Disney Studios' Chief Creative Officer Alan Horn will also leave. Horn's departure could be destabilizing, as he has been the creative guiding force at the studio for the past 9 years.
So here, again, this is code speak. Alan Horn leaving is the code speak for Kathleen Kennedy leaving. Because you can't actually attack her personally, because it will be seen as a Me Too aggression, right? As an attack on a powerful woman. So you put the shift on the man that was creating the creative vision that misled everybody, and Kathleen Kennedy wasn't able to really prosper with Mr. Horn's thing. The poor Horn is being a sacrificial lamb here. I'm sure he doesn't like it, but that's the game, right?
Indeed. And then they talk about who's going to be in charge now. Insiders at Disney say Alan Bergman, the former co-chairman of Walt Disney Studios with Horn, who was recently elevated to chairman of Disney Studios Content, will be taking the reins solo. There are no plans for the company to bring in another creative head once Horn retires.
So all that talk of Kathleen Kennedy is going to be promoted, that's done. That's done.
The article then moved on to the various division heads. Bergman and his team will have to manage competing fiefdoms of power to ensure that the studio's various brands play nicely together. These include Pixar, under the leadership of President Jim Morris and Chief Creative Officer Pete Docter, as well as Lucasfilm, overseen by Kathleen Kennedy, and Marvel, ruled by Kevin Feige. Of these heads, Feige is seen as the most essential executive, having proved his mettle with the massive success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and streaming shows like WandaVision. After it was announced in 2019 that Feige would produce a Star Wars movie, there were rumors that he might assume more control of Lucasfilm. However, insiders say that Feige is fully committed with his Marvel duties and has no ambition to lead Lucasfilm or take more of a role.
Kevin Feige is being anointed in this article as their most important player, and that he has no ambitions to take over Lucasfilm. Guess what? That suggests that there may be a position open for someone to take over.
That's exactly my reading too.
Strategically worded. It's quite humorous to me how obvious this is.
Well, yeah, that's why I was saying, do they really bring up anybody else up? Because remember, like, I don't see him saying, you know, the head of Pixar is this, that, and the other, just like they did with Kevin Feige there. And why would they even mention that, like you said, about taking over Star Wars, when that hasn't even been something that's been in the real major trades from my recollection? That's been stuff that's been rumors going on in our levels and like Doomcock and other places like that. So that's really strange that it's in a Variety article like that and how it's worded.
It's not strange. I guess
it's not. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Punchline of the. Can I be honest with you guys? This whole thing is about Lucasfilm. This entire article is about Lucasfilm. There's no reason for this article to exist. You know, Bob Chapek is officially the CEO of this company, right? There's no reason for any of this. There's no reason for making this announcement that he's butting heads, and it doesn't make any sense unless you're trying to achieve something. All of this is about Lucasfilm. All of this is subtext about Lucasfilm in order to give him the very thing that I said in our earliest videos on the Midnight's Edge. He needs cover. Bob Chapek needs cover in the cocktail party circuit so that he doesn't, you know, run into Kathleen Kennedy at Steven Spielberg's house and it becomes uncomfortable for everyone, right? And this is all about that, setting up the big strategic corporate thing to give him that coverage. It isn't about anything else. This is a Lucasfilm article.
And also then back to the article, it says, one source took a philosophical view of the film studio structure post-Horn, saying it would define the ambition of Disney going forward. If the unit's long-term plan is to maximize its existing content engines, Bergman will rule the kingdom, they said.
So we now know who's in charge. Who's in charge? Chapek's in charge of the company, and now know who's going to be in charge of setting Lucasfilm back, even if he doesn't have the title of Lucasfilm head. Right? It's going to be this Bergman guy. You know. Bergman is going to be given the thing. Well, he's the one that found Kathleen Kennedy's replacement, and he's going to be the one keeping an eye on making sure they maximize this. That's again specifically used terms. They clearly haven't maximized the value of Lucasfilm. Their only acquisition that is a complete utter failure. Right? They maximize the value of Pixar. They maximize the value of Marvel. That's why those. Three were put together: Pixar, Lucasfilm, and Marvel, and Lucasfilm is in the center of it, right? Because which of these is not like the other? This is very specific writing. I was a former journalist. This is very intentional writing to make you subconsciously come to understand certain things.
Indeed. And then the article concludes. The changing power dynamics and issues that Chapek face are similar to the ones confronting other media companies. Streaming has upended the old ways of doing business, with consumers spending more money on subscription services like Netflix and less on cable and big screen movies. That's led to an onslaught of new challengers to Netflix, such as Comcast's Peacock, Warner Media's HBO Max, and the Disney-owned Hulu, ESPN Plus, and Disney Plus. It's also prompting media companies to reshape their operations, and that's led to a sense of displacement for movie and television business veterans. Studios don't look like studios anymore, sighed one producer. There the article concludes. What do you think of that ending, Kamran? I really want to hear your thoughts on that.
This article is about
everyone is complaining.
Lucasfilm and
Things are
Kathleen
changing.
Kennedy. This article is about Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy. You highlighted the words that the article ends on: displacement, right? No, who's being displaced? Kevin Feige is not being displaced. Head of Pixar is not being displaced. Who's being displaced, right? And so that's what this is. This is telling people there's going to be displacement. So don't be shocked when someone you thought was untouchable is displaced, because now there's all this competition, which is listing all of these new things. So the most important thing is the old studio system is done. And how is the old studio system understood? It's about personalities. That goes back to Louis Mayer and Jack Warner, right? They named the studios after them, right? Since Star Wars, or since Lucasfilm became part of Disney, it has been seen as Kathleen Kennedy's Lucasfilm. It should be called Kennedy Film, right? That's what it's been seen as, and that's what it's been promoted as since George Lucas signed those papers that gave his baby up, right? So now they're saying in this article that that old day is over. Personalities are no longer going to define it. Money is going to define it. So that means the town, guess what? It looks like all those old loyalties, you thought Miss Kennedy was invincible with all the right relationships, that's over, because that era is over. It's not personal. It's not personal to her. It's just that the world has changed. This is such a strategic article, and this is literally, the Empire Strikes Back to the Forbes article. This is Bob Chapek striking back to the Forbes article that humiliated him over Gina Carano and Lucasfilm. And he did it in this brilliant, passive, aggressive way where it's all about everything except what it's actually about, which is about, Kathy, your time is done. I'm telling the town your time is done. The town now knows her time is done. No one is going to be shocked when it's Miss Kennedy is going to be stepping down from Lucasfilm, because now it's not she screwed up Lucasfilm. Now it's part of an overall corporate restructuring. They've set up the overall corporate restructuring narrative. They don't need to restructure this corporation. They're doing okay if they can get if they can get their parks back online, which they're working on now, and if they can get if they can get Marvel to keep, Marvel, we'll talk about whether Marvel knows what it's doing in the future, but right now they don't see Marvel as a problem. And so far it's made them money, and Pixar has made them money. There's only one place that hasn't made them money. So there's no corporate restructuring necessary. It's fixing this problem, but they have to put it in the context of a corporate restructuring. They're setting up the narrative. It's brilliant. And Mr. Chapek is actually really brilliant and clearly very dangerous. He's just not the kind of person you mess with. There's a reason that he replaced Iger. There's a reason that he's a CEO. He's clearly a brilliant strategist. I'm really surprised and delighted by how Machiavellian he's turned out to be.
On May 4th, we put out a video where we reiterated the rumors we had reported before, namely that Kathleen Kennedy is alleged to be on vacation until her contract expires. We haven't heard anything to suggest different since, and with Kamran deciphering what is actually being communicated in it. This Variety piece certainly lends credibility to what was reported there. With the new checks and balances Chapek installed in this new Byzantine corporate structure, Disney appears to be headed in a different direction. On paper, that could course correct both Star Wars and the MCU, which appears to be spiraling off track with Phase 4. But will it work in practice? We shall keep you up to date as it all unfolds, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure you get notifications on all videos, so you never miss an update. With that, let us know your thoughts on all of this in the comments.